This is a story about a manga that climbed so high as to be in Shonen Jump, only to fall down to the very bottom of the barrel, getting cancelled with an unfinished story mid-arc. This fall was not due to the manga itself, but a widely hated anime adaptation, tanking the reputation of the manga and that of the creators. This is the story of the world's worst rated anime. The start of this story is a promising one. The manga was written by something or one called High Rock. It's unclear if this is a company or an individual at this point in time. Regardless, High Rock maintains a relatively low profile, typical of many mangakas. However, from this individual is where we can see the first issue. This narrative is drowning in inconsistencies and meandering storylines. This ends up with inconsistent narratives and stories that the reader, quite frankly, finds very difficult to follow. Although the overarching narrative is insanely slow, this does not stop the narrative from also glossing over key and very important pieces of information. We're talking about very important plot points here, and instead of putting that time towards these plot points, we instead get these long meandering scenes on moments that don't need that time. The narrative is placed in that of a futuristic setting. To be more accurate, more of a cyberpunk setting, but I would personally classify it as more of a cyberpunk light. The story focuses on our protagonist Akira. Not that Akira. I wish it was that Akira. A kid who, growing up in a world of technology, can't seem to use any of it. Anytime he tries to interact with a smartphone or something like that, he feels like he's being sucked in and feels very sick. However, this is immediately contradicted with the following example. A quote from his brother's date. I hear that you hate machines, but you're able to fix any of them? Is that really true? He then inspects the machine with his super cool ability and pushes the audio jack cable in to the phone. That's how he fixes it. This contradiction and unremarkable display of his special talent takes place within the first 3 pages of the manga. Even with this contradiction aside, High Rock is really out here thinking, I have a character who has a special gift. How will I display it? I know, I could come up with a creative way, maybe a faulty battery, and then he can take the phone apart and check the battery. Then he can explain what happened to the battery and fix it. Something akin to how Dr. Stone explains technology. But no, I'm going to plug a phone. Because why bother using the visual medium that a manga actually grants you to show certain things like this? Nah, let's just keep it simple, because technology is too difficult to understand. This whole interaction, by the way, isn't even necessarily important to the narrative whatsoever. Overarching narrative, that is. As later in the same chapter, Akira straight up dies. He jumps in front of a car, or the car runs him down. That's very unclear, because you can see a portrait of a picture he takes earlier in the chapter in the windscreen. Either the person saw it through social media, or maybe they're time travelers who got it. I don't know. The story doesn't go that far. We're then introduced to the next 2 characters, Minami and Arma. Minami is a woman in full combat gear, but looks incredibly out of her depth, and she seems to be carrying a weird technology suitcase box thing. Accompanying her is Arma, an android that is not out of her depth at all. She's in fact cleaning up shop by taking out all of the nearby Yakuza who are, remember this image, we're gonna come back to it later. Now, before we go any further, you may have noticed that I have not mentioned anything on the art style and the overall look of the manga, and that's for good reason. The manga is illustrated by Shinya Komi, and the work she's done in the manga is much higher quality than its writing. The art has detailed line work and dynamic action scenes. I never felt lost while reading the manga whatsoever, and the paneling was actually fairly good, making use of space to display key and impressive moments while also keeping the motion of the plot and action moving in a fluid way, visually at least. They also excel at shading. It might not look very impressive page to page, but when there is something mechanical or technical on screen, it genuinely shines. While much of the manga showcases detailed and meticulously crafted artwork, there are noticeable dips in quality in certain sections. These inconsistencies can be distracting for readers, at least like me. People who have come to expect a certain level of detail and precision are taken aback when some panels appear noticeably flat, lacking any depth or dimension present in any way, shape, or form. And this, compared to the better executed scenes, can take you out of your element. These instances often have blurry lines and less refined shading, which can make the artwork look rushed or unfinished at times. The first time I noticed this was when Akira had first activated his X-Arm form, when he also integrated with Arma. When the quality drops, it breaks the immersive experience for the reader. Retaining the high quality that we were used to in previous pages is imperative for maintaining the reader's engagement, especially in a visual-driven medium like manga. In these scenes where the art quality drops significantly, it can be harder for a reader to connect, emotionally at least, with the characters in the story. This lack of detail and clarity in these moments can undermine the impact of crucial plot points and emotional beats. The manga sometimes incorporates 3D models to depict certain characters or objects. These models often clash with the traditional 2D artwork that is on display, creating a visual disparity from what has come before, and once again is incredibly jarring to the reader. This makes the 3D models look out of place and disrupts the overall aesthetic. These issues collectively impact the reader's experience massively. The high points of the art set a strong precedent, but then the dips in quality are just so crazy. I have never seen anything like this from a manga whatsoever. I didn't have high expectations coming into the manga to see something like this, but I was pleasantly surprised initially by the art, only to be met with disappointment later down the line. I completely forgot to mention the fact that there is very lewd and disgusting imagery in this manga. I accidentally skipped the second half of the first chapter. I went back to read it and I was kind of shocked by what I saw. Borderline SA scene. No, borderline other things scene, 100% SA scene. So do not check this out if that's something that you find troubling. However, I can understand how one might like the manga. The artwork for the most part is fine. And honestly, the fact that the main protagonist is a brain in a suitcase is a fairly cool idea in my opinion. To me at least. Oh, there's an anime adaptation? Let's have a look at this. I wonder if they made any effort to make the narrative more streamlined. Or I don't know, making the same mistake about using the 3D models instead of using actual art. I think it's really important because if you don't keep everything in the same art style, it'd become really jarring, especially when they're side by side. Hello, I'm crying every day. The anime adaptation of X-Arm is a notorious example for how a promising manga can suffer from poorly executed adaptations. Released in January 2021, yes, not that long ago, the series quickly became infamous for its low quality in several critical aspects. It wasn't even several critical aspects, it's all over. It's a mess through and through. The anime was produced by Visual Fight, a studio that is relatively new in the industry and hasn't done shit since X-Arms. I wonder why. Direction was handled by Yoshikatsu Kirima, who does have quite a bit of a background, but in live action mediums, and very little experience with animation. The script was driven by Tommy Moran. I'm not going to correct myself. That's what I'm going with. The adaptation opted for 3D and CG animation styles. It wouldn't be that bad if that's what they actually stuck with through and through. Diverging significantly from the 2D art style of the manga, this direction was part of an attempt to create a unique visual identity for the manga, which it certainly did, and boy was it bad. The choice of a director for a live action background and the new animation studio contributed to the production's challenges. The team lacked necessary experience to deliver a high quality 3D animation. Reports suggest that the production faced budget constraints and a lack of resources, which further hampered the quality of the final product. Upon release, the anime was met with widespread criticism for its poor animation. 3D models were stiff and awkward. As you can clearly see, there's no need for me to tell you that. It is insane that someone said that this looked okay. With a lack of fluidity and expression, which is the understatement of the century. You cannot see any form of emotion on these faces whatsoever. That's what makes it so jarring when you see a 2D character standing beside, because that looks like a person This looks like a doll. This starkly contrasted with the detailed and dynamic manga and other work in the anime. The story in the anime was also unchanged, if not made worse. It was heavily criticized by everyone, including myself. The pacing issues and poorly executed action sequences led to a disjointed narrative that failed to capture the essence of the original story. Editor's note, there was actually a few changes, particularly about the things I was discussing about before, about the essay in the first chapter. Things like that were completely removed. After all, this is a Crunchyroll original. But credit where credit is due, the voice acting received some praise. And the soundtrack did add appropriate atmosphere to the series. Anime quickly became subject to ridicule on social media, and even 3 years later, with memes and videos mocking the quality. This backlash highlighted the disappointment among the fans who expected a better product of a manga they liked. Now, as I said, I can sort of understand why someone would like the manga, okay? It's got pretty good artwork and it's gooner pilled because everyone got big booby and they're all kissing for some reason. What I mean by that, by the way, is the fact that like when the guy wants to use his ability, they have to kiss. Two of the main character girls have to kiss for some reason. It's weird. One's a robot, so technically it's not two girls. The combination of an inexperienced production team, budget constraints, and the misguided choice to use a 3D animated style led to the anime's failure. That's not what led to the anime's failure. The story from the start was pure shite, okay? The art's okay, the story is dribble. I wanted to do a review on this, but I could not get past episode 5. It is the most horrible thing I've ever had to watch. I read the manga. That's like, as I said, if you're going to experience this story, and you shouldn't, but if you are going to force yourself through it like I did, you should read the manga. There's one thing that's bad about trying to experience the story, is that it's not going to ever finish. It's dead. Not just the anime, but the manga too. The poor reception of the anime cast a horrible shadow on the manga's reputation. Potential new readers who had encountered the anime first were likely to be dissuaded from exploring the manga, fearing similar disappointments. In terms of story, yeah, can't be helped. Longtime fans of the manga were frustrated by the adaptation, feeling that it did a disservice to the original artwork. This frustration was expressed throughout various fan forums and social media platforms, which, in all matter of fact, led to the cancellation of the X-Arms manga. Suddenly cancelled mid-arc, with some guesses at it being because the anime tanked its reputation. X-Arms stands as a testament to declare the balance between storytelling and adaptation. While the manga had its flaws, it had also potential, and it was unfortunate that it was overshadowed by the poorly criticized anime. This story underscores the importance of thoughtful and respectful adaptations in preserving the integrity and success of their original work.